Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC and today I'm going to be taking a look at the Armor220. It looks like Banggoods is trying to have a crack at the DarkMax, so let's get and take a closer look at it. So why is this Banggoods version of the DarkMax? Well, every single component is exactly the same as the Fury B DarkMax except for the frame. And I actually think it's going to be the frame that is the downfall of this copter. You see, if you look at the link in the description, at the making of this video, this copter is currently more expensive than the Emax Hawk 5, which is just an astonishing copter. And one good thing about the original DarkMax was that it was cheap. So I think this is more expensive because they've used a more expensive frame, and I'm not too fond of the frame. You see, the first thing I do when I pick a copter up is I do this to see what the rigidity is like, and with this one I could see the arms bending, which I've never seen before on a copter that has 4mm carbon. So I don't know if it's the way that they have cut the frame or whether it's the weave of the carbon, but to me that seems fairly weak. And it's a unibody, so if you break an arm you're going to have to replace the entire bottom plate, so it's not a good start for me. Now, I absolutely loved the DarkMax. However, I was one of the first reviewers to get one, and when people started to buy it, they changed the components of the copter and it started to have problems. It would do what we call flips of death when you used a 4-cell battery. You'd throttle up and it'd just flip out of control. And it turned out that it was to do with the flight controller that they were using. I don't know whether it was receiving too much noise or what, but people were having to swap out the flight controller. And the way that you found out whether you got a Duff flight controller was you have a square buzzer here, and worryingly this one has a square buzzer. So I'm a little bit apprehensive with flying this one just because it seems to have this stack here that has the problem, so we shall see. But it's got the same motors, so the motors are a 2205 2550 kV DYS motor. I really like this motor, and you might be thinking that kV is a bit low for 4S, and yes, the original DarkMax was rated for a 6S battery. In fact, I've flown it many times on a 6S battery and the motors don't even get warm. It flies quite nicely on a 6S. However, because I've got this stack here that I'm not sure about, I'm going to be flying this off a 4S today. And interestingly, they don't actually list what battery you can use with this. Now I'm going to assume it's a 4 to 6S, but maybe they've taken that away because people were having problems with it. But the guts is a 35 amp BL Heli S D-Shot 600 4-in-1 ESC board. And then above that, we've got a Omnibus F4 SD flight controller, so you can put an SD card in there. And it's got a built-in VTX. It's a switching VTX as well, so it switches from 25 milliwatt to 100 milliwatt to 200 milliwatt. It's also 48 channel. And one thing I really like about this is that it was pretty much noise-free, so I'll have to see if this one is the same because it's a slightly different setup. They call this stack here, they call it the AR Tower V2, I think, and I think AR is actually Aurora RC, interestingly. And I really like these three buttons. One is for your power output, and you have some LEDs that are just visible there, and if you look at the instructions here, so this is 1 and 2, and this is your power. So when L1 is on, it's 200 milliwatt, when L2 is on, it's 100 milliwatt, and then when they're both off, it's 25 milliwatt. These are your individual channels here, and these are your bands. The only thing I'll say is the green channels are quite difficult to see through here. They've put the receiver over the top. So this is the bind and fly version. It's come with a XM Plus. I did have to add my own cable ties here and heat shrink as well. But back onto the VTX, and it's using a little micro UFL connector, which comes up to a SMA connector up here, and that's in quite nicely, and it's RPSMA if you are wondering. So to change the channel, you've got this button here, so it's a single press, and then the band is a 2-second press. Be careful because this channel chart that they have given here does not match up to the VTX. I've got a band scanner, so I'm able to check, but if you don't have that, then be careful because completely doesn't match up. And then we've got a bootloader button there as well, so if you are struggling to get into DFU mode when flashing Betaflight, you can press that. I quite like that, and it's very accessible here as well, which I like. It does come with a pagoda antenna, but I'm not a big fan of pagodas, so I've switched it out. But yeah, just sort of like a generic pagoda antenna. And whilst I'm here, so this is all the stuff that you get. Got some extra screws, which is nice. Looks like we have got a 3-pin 1mm pitch JST for something, maybe a spare, and we've got a spanner in there. And I want to point out as well, there's a screw and an O-ring in there. That's not a spare. If you look on the side there, there is no screw in this side, and that is because these screws, they aren't quite long enough to reach the camera. So what they've done is they've half screwed in this one, half screwed in this one, and it meant that the camera was loose. I'd rather have one screw fully screwed in tight, so that's why there's only one there. Of course you could get a different screw, but there you go. Now the camera, it is a CMOS 16:9 camera. I don't know why they do this, but I think it's the manufacturer who builds them sends the retailers duff information, because GearBest as well, they say it's a CCD camera, and it's not. It's a CMOS camera, and it's not a high quality one either. I prefer 4x3. That's just my preference. So there you go. And you'll notice as well, it's funny, this frame, because it looks like it has camera protection, but then the camera comes right out here. Perhaps it's designed for a micro one, although the spacing certainly isn't micro, so that's not really going to do any protection if you are into that. And let's take a look at some of the other stuff. So you don't get given a battery, so I'm using this Tattoo R-Line 1300 milliamp there. And you get given these really rubbish battery straps. They're really thin. You do get given a silicone mat though, which is nice. I've had to put that on. And you're given 2 of these straps. So I've got a GoPro on here. And one thing I noticed is there's only just enough room for this strap to go around your GoPro. A normal battery strap will not fit through there. So you kind of have to use this, and it's a little bit flimsy if you've got a GoPro on there. And the GoPro doesn't quite fit on the top that nice either. Right, let's talk about the weight. So it's quite lightweight. That is good. So with the props on and without a battery and with the antenna, it is coming in at 302 grams. So not lightweight, but not heavy either. Then if you add a 1300 milliamp 4S battery, it is 470 grams, and if you add a GoPro, it is 544 grams. Now, it pretty much needed a complete setup on there. It's got some generic settings flash to it, but you know, motor stock was turned on, D-Shop 600 was there, but you know, stuff like anti-gravity, dynamic filters, air mode, and I think it just was set up to arm on a switch. It's got these stock PIDs in there. It's Betaflight 3.20, so fairly old version. It's got stock rates, and I have switched around the on-screen display as well. I think it's an NTSC camera, but I think you can switch it. It's got a button on the back there, like an on-screen display, to change that around. The props are quite nice. You get the Gemfan Flash 5152 tri-blade, which is a high-pitched prop, I would say, but because it's low in kV, I think that might be why they've made that choice. I received the semi-transparent black ones and also the clear ones. Okay, now I was going to run a GoPro with this guy for the line of sight, but then I thought, you know what, if it's going to do its flippy thing, then that is just one more thing to clean off. And it's actually raining at the moment, so it's going to be a lot of stuff to clean off, so the tune might not be great with it not having a GoPro on there. So let's see if I can get it to flip out. First punch was okay. Let's go into acro. That was just angle mode there. The power delivery feels smooth, but I do believe when it does those flips, it is something that happens sort of like randomly. So I'll fly it around for a little bit. I do believe that there is a V3 of this board that supposedly is okay, and I'm hoping that this is it. Do you know what? I'm not hearing actually any oscillations. It's actually running fairly quiet. So maybe the tune is okay without a GoPro. Yeah, it flies nice. Bags of power, as you would expect. And because it's fairly light, doesn't matter that those motors are a lower kV, it is really shifting this guy. Of course, it's got a nice prop on there. I think that's helping. Oh man, this rain's really coming down. It's set to rain all week. It is April. They even give it a name, April showers they call that here. But so far, it's behaving. Famous last words, isn't it? I'm trying to say that because when I say so far it's behaving, then it does something stupid. I'm trying to induce it into one of these crazy flips. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to prove that, you know, spending all of this money is not going to get you a copter that's going to do crazy flips, because that's what started to happen with the original DarkMax running this gear. But so far I cannot trick it out. And yeah, this tune seems pretty nice for the line of sight, at least. Let's see how noisy it is on full chat. See, it's quiet. Which is pretty nice. Now, I haven't put any conformal coating on this guy, so I wouldn't recommend flying one in the rain, or any copter for that matter, unless you have conformal coated it, and even then your camera's going to get covered in raindrops, so I prefer not to. But this is the UK, I don't have that luxury, I'm afraid. Well, you know, I'd say I'm getting close to running the battery full there, and it seems okay. So seems like this one does not have a problem. Flick it back into angle mode, see if we've got any drift. No drift. Okay, let's do some FPV with this guy. Now it is raining, so there are going to be splodges of water on the camera, but I do think I'm seeing some dark patches on the camera anyways. I do think that there's a bit of dirt on the sensor. Now, you can unscrew this lens, so if there is dirt, then you could clean it out, but yeah, bit of a pain. Okay, let's try full throttle. And it's quite heavy on the amps. Look at the camera washing out there. I do think that is because it is actually washing out rather than it being the rain. Let's check out the tune. Some hesitation. This is with a GoPro. Hesitation is fine. A little bit loose, but not too bad. Roll also seems fine. Let's try any movement on the throttle with the eye gain. Not bad at all. So yeah, stock Betaflight tune. It is designed for a 5-inch copter with a GoPro, and that's what this is, so hardly surprising really. Video feed is really clear apart from the splodges on the sensor. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this camera, honestly. It's taken some time to adjust for the light, I think. You see that there. I mean, it flies okay. It flies all right. Dropping below 14 volts, but it's not too bad. Personally, I'd put some lower pitch props on, really. I think maybe some Dell Cyclones, maybe 50, 45, 46, something like that. Bags of power, though. Bags of power. I like it, just, well, you know, keep an eye on the price, I would say, because I think the Emax Hawk 5 is better camera, a little bit cheaper, and, you know, it's tuned, although I'd say it was a fluke that the tuner's working with this one, because it's just stopped beta flight PIDs. That's my opinion. Can you see it says DarkMax as well? I didn't put that in, that was already in there, so either they've just, you know, taken a batch from the DarkMax and just plonked it in there and just kept all of the same settings, or I don't know. It says DarkMax on there. But you know, it flies nice. It's not doing the flip of death, so I'm glad that is the case. Maybe it's a different version of the board that they have put in. Whoops, a little bit low there. Yeah, I like how quiet it is as well. Usually when I put a copter on full throttle, it echoes around here, which is a nice thing, but it's not very social, is it? It's anti-social. You get an ASBO or something. Not with this guy. Not with this guy. It's a bit quieter. But yeah, getting a little bit of water on the camera. It's raining. Had to wait 3 hours for the rain to stop, and it's that annoying weather where there's always moisture in the air, so even when it stops raining you'll get moisture on your camera. So I would not advise flying in those conditions, but there you go. It's the card I've been dealt today. Whoa, I'm gonna stay there. So what's our battery at? Yeah, it's getting pretty low, 14.5, but you know, not a bad flight time really. Oh, that's flight, yeah, fly minutes, yeah, so that's right. This is a brand new battery though, I should point that out. Right, yeah, so I'll link it in the description. I don't think many will go for it because of the price. I think we'll go for the Hawk 5 instead, but keep an eye on the price, because, you know, I think if enough people make a video like mine, they'll realize the price is too much for what this thing is doing, and they'll reduce it. So there you go. Anyways, I'll try and come in for a landing. This camera angle's quite harsh, so it might be quite tricky. But yes, as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.